As Russian drones swarm European skies, NATO scrambles for answers. A new Swedish interceptor, 16,000 times cheaper than a fighter jet, could flip the air defense game. The Kreuger 100 doesn't explode. It hunts and crushes drones mid-air with kinetic force. As Europe plans to build a drone wall to counter Moscow's cheap warfare, the question is, has NATO finally found a smarter way to stop Putin's drone army? A new Swedish defense system could make European skies safer as the NATO nations grapple to tackle Russian drones flying over their airports. The new Swedish defense system is 16,000 times cheaper than a fighter jet. Nordic Air Defence, a Stockholm-based tech firm, is building the low-cost mini-missile, which uses kinetic force to knock out drones whirring over critical infrastructure, such as airports and factories, as seen across EU airspace in recent weeks. The Kreuger 100 interceptor uses infrared sensors to hunt down hostile drones and ram them out of the sky at high speed, making it much safer to use in civilian areas than explosive projectiles. Carl Rosander, the chief executive of NAD, told The Telegraph,
"These airport incursions are the perfect example of why protecting public spaces against drones needs a more sophisticated solution than just shooting them down. We're building a small electricity-driven interceptor, which is only kinetic. It doesn't have any warheads or explosives. It knocks the drone down by coming at high speed. This means police can use it in civil environments. We don't want to be shooting explosives over airports, so this would be perfect for what happened in Denmark. You avoid shooting expensive missiles and burning fragments over civilian infrastructure."
As Russian drones keep intruding on European skies, EU leaders are urgently looking for ways to defend their airports. Recently, a string of suspected Russian drone incursions in Denmark, Norway and Germany has compelled them to think of innovative ways to curtail cheap Russian drones rather than sending million-dollar fighter jets to shoot them down, as happened in Poland on September 9th and 10th. Dutch F-35s were sent to take care of the situation. Russian drones can cost as little as £1,000 each, whereas NATO's current tactic of scrambling fighter jets, as it did with success in Poland, is enormously expensive by comparison. Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, warned this week.
And also when it comes to the drone wall initiative, I think that was an excellent idea, and there was a first meeting last Friday and NATO was participating. Also bringing together the eastern flank states in NATO working on this big issue. And why is that important? Because first of all, we have to keep our skies safe. And we have seen over the last couple of weeks what happened with the drones in Poland, the MiG-31s in Estonia, but also what is happening now in Denmark. In Denmark, we are still assessing what is behind it. But when it comes to Poland and Estonia, it's clear that it is the Russians. Still, we are assessing whether it is intentional or not. But even if it is not intentional, it is reckless and it is unacceptable. So we need to protect our skies. So the drone wall initiative is timely and necessary. Because in the end, we cannot spend millions of euros or dollars on missiles to take out the drones, which are only costing a couple of $1,000s.
Moreover, civilian safety remains their main challenge, as shooting down drones with powerful missiles over civilian areas creates the risk of death, injuries, and damage to key infrastructure. The key advantage of Rosander's Kreuger system is that its estimated cost is as little as $5,000, a fraction of the price of the F-15 and F-35 NATO fighter jets used to destroy drones over Poland last month. Concept imagery showed the missiles could be launched in several ways, from a handheld cannon, a rifle-like device, launch crates that contain projectiles, or vehicle-mounted systems. It would also be beneficial in a war zone, such as Ukraine, where drones are a constant threat to ground troops and hardware. The system would allow soldiers to take out bomb-laden FPV drones that are increasingly difficult to jam or shoot out of the sky. CGI footage released by the firm showed a battlefield scenario in which 2 quadcopter FPV drones carrying bombs are closing in on a military convoy. A vehicle on the ground, armed with kinetic missiles, is shown launching the projectiles from a vehicle-mounted system to intercept and destroy the drones before they could reach their target. Mini-missiles are not the only new anti-drone systems being explored by EU leaders, who have also considered building a so-called drone wall. The wall would consist of radars and air defences placed along Europe's eastern flank with Russia and its main regional ally, Belarus. On October 3rd, the European Union held its first formal discussions on how to build a drone wall, inviting Ukraine and 10 other EU member states, mostly Baltic and Nordic countries. Hungary and Slovakia, which have grown increasingly Kremlin-friendly in recent years, were initially not included in the discussions. However, both countries later sent representatives to the meeting in Brussels. Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, talked about the drone wall at a summit in Copenhagen this week.
This project aims to counter the full spectrum of threats at our eastern borders. A core element of these will be the so-called drone wall. It is basically an anti-drone system that is able to do swift detection, interception, and of course, if necessary, neutralization. Here we draw a lot on Ukraine's expertise, of course, and therefore we must move forward rapidly together with Ukraine and NATO.
However, experts told The Telegraph that the drone wall could be hugely expensive, and it would only prevent incursions of drones launched from Russian or Belarusian territory flying over land. It would need to be uniform in terms of its structure and technology to make sure it was effective across the whole eastern flank, Rosander noted. It would also demand the total political commitment of all EU countries on the eastern flank. Otherwise, it would lead to an airspace gap that Russian drone swarms could easily slip through. Another reason the drone wall would be just part of a solution for Europe is that it has no use for preventing hostile drone launches within the EU's borders. With this in mind, some European countries are working on their own reforms at the national level to better defend against drones. In Germany, the government is planning to change its army's rules of engagement so that they are allowed to shoot down drones if they pose a threat to critical infrastructure. Denmark this week sought to avoid any further incursions over Copenhagen during a European summit by imposing a blanket ban on civilian drones. In the long run, this tactic could create its own issues as small civilian drones are highly popular among hobby enthusiasts, as well as photographers seeking to take aerial photographs. Another piece of technology which could support airports is the handheld radio frequency jammer, which can force a drone to land or even send it flying in a different direction. However, jammers are said to have a low effect range.